Welcome back to another Star Minigaming YouTube video. We are back once again for our third battle report in our narrative campaign series following the vampiress Lady Sinessa and her rise to power. In this particular mission, Sinessa is not present. We have my death forces over here on the right, and my opponent Henry's Skaven and Khorne forces on the other side. The objective of this mission was pretty simple. If you've already watched the narrative video that I did, kind of linking scenario 2 and 3, and explaining what's going on here, then you'll have a pretty good idea of what's at stake here. But I'll real briefly run over what the mission was and a couple of special rules we had. So my army commander for this battle is Vlad von Carstein, who is coming to help Sinessa. They have a common goal. This opponent, who is the Chaos Lord Dreg Skulltaker, on the other end, has captured his beloved in the time whenever Chaos basically was conquering and burning all of the mortal realms, and Vlad, of course, wants her back, wants to free her. And Dreg Skulltaker, having failed 2 previous missions, is no longer really favored by Khorne, and as such, for this mission, is seeking to regain the favor of his god. And so he has lost the unique ability of his axe to inflict, an insta-kill on a 5 or 6 if there is an unsaved wound that was inflicted in the combat phase. He's lost that, but against all heroes, he's gained the unique ability of +1 to his hit rolls for this battle. And Vlad, in his frustration against Dreg, has the ability as if as if Isabella was on the table, so he gets to reroll ones to hit, and he also counts as if she's dead when inflicting damage onto his opponent, and so that's damage of 2 as opposed to normal 1. So let's go ahead and get started. Here are the units for my opponent Henry that are in reserve. He had 20 Blood Reavers, a Skaven Assassin, and their little drill team. I honestly can't remember the name of them, but they're a little unit that can infiltrate via, kind of like a deep strike, come in as later reserves, and they can bring an allied unit with them kind of through their tunnel. So he was bringing in the Blood Reavers there. This is a unit of, I believe, a little over 30, maybe 35 clan rats. We have, of course, 5 Blood Warriors, Mighty Lord of Khorne, Dreg Skulltaker. We have 2 Blood Stokers, and we have 2 Blood Secrators. There's one hiding over here. And, of course, we have the Doom Wheel, which unfortunately has done nothing up to this point in any of the games. On my side of the battlefield, we have, of course, my General, Vlad. We have his personal attendant and bodyguard to a degree, this White King with the Black Axe. We have a Karen Wraith. We have 10 zombies. We have 5 Hex Wraiths. We have 3 Spirit Hosts. We have my Coven Throne that I'm converting to hold Mopus and his princes from the novel Stormcast. We have 40 Skeleton Warriors over here, and we have 3 Vargheists over here. And we have, hiding right here behind the Spirit Host, you can just barely make him out, we have my Necromancer. So I won turn 1 and moved everything up rather quickly. I ran units basically across the entire board. I summoned in the second unit of Hex Wraiths. I know that it's the Black Knight models. I intentionally built them to be Hex Wraiths, but I built the Black Knight models to have some diversity in the models that I'm bringing to the table. I will never field Black Knights unless some formation calls for them, because they are abysmal in their stats, and Hex Wraiths are actually worth taking. Vlad also summoned 20 more zombies, which they had their pretty large group right here. We had the skeletons move up and run, not too quickly. The Vargeist jumped up. They were quite a bit behind everybody, so they moved pretty quickly. The Coven Throne moved up, as did the Spirit Host, kind of keeping pace with it. You know, these heroes back here ran as well. Khorne Wraith ran. Basically, my approach at this point was to move up the Vargeist on one flank, the 2 units of Hexwraiths on the other far flank, and then down the center to have the very quick units of the Coven Throne as well as the Spirit Hosts, to kind of have a 3-pronged assault to try to pin my opponent in place as much as possible and contain his forces, while Vlad and, you know, the other heroes that I have kind of in this, I guess, very slightly bent L shape, moved up with their more horde units like the zombies and the skelebones. And there's a bit more of a zoomed out picture of my side of the battlefield. And on my opponent Henry's first turn, basically all of his units moved up and moved slightly to their right. You know, there's clearly advantages to sticking together, especially when you are outnumbered numerically. You know, he has basically on the table at this point a lot of, I'd say, pretty elite Khorne units right here. And then, of course, this horde of rats and the Doom Wheel, which is, again, I would consider most of the larger monsters or tanks or stuff to kind of generally fall into the elite category because they are typically more powerful and smaller in number. There's kind of a close-up of his commander, Dreg. Okay, and then here we have it after turn 2. I won priority again, turn 2. And everything moved up quickly. Summoned in a Hexwraith over, I'm sorry, not Hexwraith. I will confuse the two names quite often because they're far too close. I summoned in a Khorne Wraith right here, which is a Reaper Bones model. He kind of looks like a ninja Nazgul to me, and I think he looks pretty cool, so he's the second Khorne Wraith that I will bring into games. He'll be painted up pretty soon. Pretty simple model to paint. This unit of Hexwraiths that had been so far ahead, if you'll notice, the board is broken up into 4 segments. And these Hexwraiths were right at the beginning of section 3. And each of these segments is probably close to 2 feet wide. But anyways, you know, between their movement, which they are rather fast, and then a really good charge roll to get them within the 3 inches that they needed, they were, and I believe I also threw on Vlad's buff of +1 to charge, to run and to hit, depending on, you know, whichever ones apply that turn. They were able to move on up and actually hit the Scave in turn 2. They had a Mystic Shield thrown on them, as did my Coven Throne, which moved up over to here. Roughly, it was actually hanging out up in the ruins. You know, it can fly, so we aren't concerned about that. And then it rolled its charge and quite easily got within range of some of the Skaven, and then piled in. We had these other Hexwraiths move up and claim this cover right here in this well. Obviously, the Khorne Wraith is right there. That was summoned quite far ahead. The Spirit Host moved up as quickly as they could. They weren't within charge range, so they ran a little bit to try to keep pace with the Coven Throne, even though clearly they're a little bit behind it. The Vargeist moved up on the far flank. Again, I understand that the Vargeist are going to have to go a greater distance because my opponent is keeping his army so bunched together on the opposite edge of the table. But they still, the plan is with them at this point still to kind of do a large sweep in from that edge and kind of use them, the Spirit Host, and the Coven Throne, and really, to a lesser degree, this unit of Hexwraiths, to kind of pin them in and prevent them from being able to swing further to their left. And, you know, by accomplishing that and using these Hexwraiths wherever I need to help kind of keep them pinned in place, I give myself more time for my slower moving horde units and really what I considered the backbone of my army between them and the majority of my heroes, to allow time for them to move on up to engage my opponent and slowly grind them down and crush them. You know, at least that's the plan. Here's another shot So you can kind of see where the rest of my forces are after they moved up. The skeletons moved particularly fast this turn, I recall. I remember they moved the full 10 that's possible for them to move when they run. The zombies also moved quite highly with their run roll. You can see Vlad right here, the Necromancer right here, the White King right here, and the Khorne Wraith over here. You know, all of those units kind of bringing up the rear of my army. Again, my army is pretty well split into two groups, right? I have the very quick units, and then the units are kind of that I would consider in the same category, like this this Khorne Wraith that's up front that that are quick because, you know, he was basically thrown, you know, kind of like slingshotted almost like that far up in advance because of Vlad's summoning of him. So, you know, I had quite a good chunk of my army and a lot of units that really have a lot of good staying power already up in the front to really bog down my opponent. And this was a shot that I got of my skeletons. Again, you know, it's the same picture, just kind of taken from a different angle, because I thought it looked really cool with the Necromancer right here with this, you know, kind of green and black fire, kind of guiding all of these skeletons forth. You know, the skeletons are all in fairly kinetic-looking poses, and with all the buildings and terrain and these zombies up front and in here, I thought it was a really neat shot, kind of, you know, gave even more the illusion of actual motion of the models. In the following turn, which was my opponent's turn, the bottom of turn 2, if you will, my opponent Henry used his little Skaven drill team with their, in essence, deep strike ability to come onto the field, and their allies, of course, came up with them. And their objective was to kill Vlad, which is right here. Or, well, not kill Vlad, but injure him as much as they could. Because, as I said before, the scenario did not allow for anyone to kill Vlad or the Chaos Lord except for the opposing general. We added that, of course, that kind of plot armor, if you will, because, you know, the story that we were building here, it was imperative that those two fight and one of them kill the other one to advance their goals in the narrative. So for purposes of it, you could wound them down to 1 wound, then you could no longer wound them. They could regain wounds, you know, Vlad could, and so then you could fight them again and knock them down to 1 wound, things like that. But basically, you know, they were invincible to a degree. So here we have his forces again, kind of an aerial shot to show you just how close they are to Vlad and this Khorne Wraith when they came on, and, you know, all deployed out of the initial spot. So here is, you know, kind of the rest of his army where the bigger conflict, and when I say bigger, I don't mean more important, I mean, you know, numerically more models currently engaged in combat is taking place, and more different units, right, like different squads. These Hex Wraiths, since this is no longer my turn, gain access to the cover that they're in, and between the kind of rock wall that they're hugging and this river, we decided that that was enough, that we would grant the entire squad cover. I know that, you know, technically within the rules you could stick one guy in a building and have the entire rest of the squad kind of like snake tail away, and the entire squad could gain cover. We don't really like to play that way. You know, we generally want the squad to have a legitimate reason for having cover, and we felt this was justified. So between that and the Mystic Shield they'd had cast on them earlier, they were looking at a 2-up save ignoring Rend. This Coven Throne over here, between the terrain that he was hugging and the Mystic Shields, he was also at a 2-up. The Spirit Hosts are clearly not engaged in combat, none of these other units are. So my opponent Henry moved all these units up and planted the 2 Blood Secrators because of the new FAQ stating that things such as Mystic Shield can stack the bonuses, and after looking at the Blood Secrator rules, we couldn't find any language that indicated to us that you would only get the buff once, no matter how many of them were within range. There was no language of the like of, if you're within range of any, or, you know, you may have this bonus once, you know, things like that. Each time it said you may gain an extra attack in the profile of the Blood Secrator. So we, you know, in the interest of consistency and trying to make it a fair and equal game as much as possible, I allowed my opponent to give all of his Khorne forces that would receive the benefit normally +2 to each of their close combat weapons, as opposed to just +1 that a single Blood Secretor gives you. So he had the 2 of them planted. His units moved on in, because they knew that they would need quite a bit to smash into these Hex Wraiths, because honestly, between the Hex Wraiths and the Mortis Engine and units fleeing, the Skaven had already lost a significant number. Not enough to be crippled, but a pretty good chunk of their forces right there. So anyways, here's again kind of a zoomed out picture of just where everybody's located at this point. Then Henry rolled some of his charges. He got the Skaven in. The Assassin jumped out from this unit and attacked Vlad as well. Between the 2 of them, the Drill did nothing, and I believe the Assassin did nothing on his first turn, may have inflicted 1 wound. And then a little bit later in the combat phase, all of these Reavers charged up and began to pour their attacks into Vlad. This kind of, again, zoomed out. The Blood Warriors over here charged in to fight these Hex Wraiths that had cover. The Mighty Lord of Khorne moved on into this Hex Wraith unit that was at the 2-up save. Had the 2 Bloodstokers move on in. My my Coven Throne piled in to this Blood Secretor right here. The other one had also had his icon planted. The Doom Wheel, kind of sat back for now to be able to open fire whenever it had the opportunity. Here we go. Here's kind of the results after the first turn of combat. Vlad traded blows with the Assassin, so Vlad took 1 wound. The Assassin took 2 or 3 the first turn. The zombies waited until the Reavers piled into Vlad and attacked him. Then they piled in and attacked the Reavers and did quite a bit of damage to them, significantly reducing their numbers between actual casualties and some fleeing from battle shock. The Skaven lost even more units. Excuse me. A couple of the Blood Warriors died between the Hex Wraith that they were fighting and the the Hex Wraith that they were fighting and the Karen Wraith that they killed. And then on the next turn, it was Henry's turn again. It was the first time he'd won priority, so he got the bottom of turn 2 and the top of turn 3, one after the other, and managed to kill one of the Hex Wraiths in this first squad and inflict a wound on another between those 2 turns. Killed a Hex Wraith over here and ended up inflicting a wound on another. The Hex Wraiths managed to kill off these 2 Blood Warriors in this turn at the top of turn 3. More Skaven died. The Mighty Lord of Khorne pulls away, as you'll see in a moment. Yep, it comes around here because Vlad is his ultimate target. The zombies finish killing off the last of those Blood Reavers, and Vlad does some more damage to this Assassin. A few of the Blood Reavers turn into zombies by rolling a 6 on the die for each of them that I had killed. And the Blood Secretor that had at the bottom of turn 2 been fighting against the Coven Throne pulled out of combat because of fear of being killed. It was not going his way. And here you can just see all the Blood Reavers are dead. The Assassin is down to 1 wound. Excuse me. Vlad is down to 1 wound as well. This poor drill team continues to do nothing. They will accomplish nothing all game. They will never hit and wound successfully. So then on my next turn, the bottom of turn 3, I had the Spirit Host move on up and charge the Skaven. I had the remaining 3 Hex Wraiths attack the Skaven as well. And between the combined might of those 2 units, they completely wiped out the Skaven before even the Battle Shock phase. The Coven Throne flew on up and attacked the Doom Wheel and reduced it down to a single wound in 1 turn. This unit of Hex Wraiths that had been sitting on the well charged the Mighty Lord of Khorne, and in that turn reduced him down to only 2 wounds remaining. And Vlad managed to finish killing this Assassin and actually helped the zombies kill this team. Ended up charging over towards this Mighty Lord of Khorne, and on the next turn, because I won priority for the top of turn 4, and engaged him in combat and killed him immediately. Nobody else moved. Nobody else was really needed to be moved in the combat, because that was the end of the game. The objective was kill the opponent's commander with your commander. So I mean, realistically, we could have just each brought the one unit, but we wanted the entire game, and there was an aspect tactically of bringing the rest of the troops to potentially weaken your opponent's commander before your commander fought them, and prevent the opponent from doing so. And we had considered, if we wanted to, after we killed the opponent's commander, if our commander was not able to successfully get off the opponent's side of the board without being killed himself, then it would be at best a minor victory for us, as opposed to a major, which would generate a roll on the triumph table. But at this point, as you can see right here, there's literally nothing of his back here. His commander's dead. His little Valkia model that I forgot to mention earlier, that was standing in his Valkia, it's a Reaper Bones model, was engaged against 2 Khorne Wraiths. This one had been resummoned and was losing this duel against the 2 of them. Over here, this Doom Wheel is down to 1 wound, is about to die, honestly, in this combat phase. The 2 Bloodstokers are okay, but they're surrounded by 3 Vargheists, this unit of 3 Khorne Wraiths that's left, 3 Spirit Hosts, one of them's taken a wound, another unit of 3 Hex Wraiths. These are Hex Wraiths if I said Khorne Wraiths by mistake. Basically, his units, he had several heroes left over here, but they were badly outnumbered and probably would die relatively easy. All of these units I actually didn't even move this turn, because they were at the top of turn 4. There was no point. Vlad had cast or used his hero ability on himself. He'd had Mystic Shields put on him. He managed to roll a 12 on his charge to engage this guy at the top of turn 4 whenever he only needed a 10. He moved right in, he mowed him down, didn't even get a chance for the Mighty Lord of Khorne Dreg to attack back. And so we just called the game there, because again, this just would have been a case of mopping up. Even if the dice had been quite unfavorable, just the numbers arrayed here against these few Khorne heroes, and Vlad's ability to, if he needed, kind of let all these units tie them down while he ran over here and took a longer route around, or waited for his hordes to kind of catch up with him and just march, in the midst of them. There was no real way that Vlad was not going to safely make it off the table at this point. So we called it there. So for purposes of, continuing the campaign, our friend, the Mighty Lord of Khorne, Dreg, Skulltaker, is dead. Khorne is sick of him. He does not consider him worth the time or effort to keep alive through any kind of divine acts of intervention. The remaining Khorne forces just flood the battlefield, and the Death faction didn't bother to waste their time or effort chasing him down, because they'll mop him up soon enough, is their attitude. They achieved what they wanted. Vlad is victorious. He's cut down the man who captured his beloved, and he is on his way to reuniting, or to meeting up with Sinessa and continuing the 3-pronged goal of his Mopus and Sinessa's of moving on and taking this Chaos Fortress eventually that they'll get to, for varying reasons for each of the 3. But we'll have a new Khornate character who is risen to kind of lead the local Khorne forces, and in the next scenario he will be not necessarily desperate in the same sense that Dreg was, because Dreg had failed twice already, and had failed so spectacularly, but he will be eager to prove that he, deserves the position leading these Khornate forces, not just to his Lord Khorne, but also kind of solidifying it and preventing any kind of infighting from within his own Khornate forces. So that's going to wrap this one up. Until next time, this is James, and happy gaming.